Hello everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 224. I just got done recording a segment with Lisa and Jen from the Prince and the Pervert podcast, and it was a barn burner. That'll be ready later on tonight when Jen and Lisa are done doing their editing. That will be uploaded, and you will be able to download it. So be on the lookout for that later on tonight. As for our article tonight, well, we have an article from ABC News. The headline, former Jeffrey Epstein companion, co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell seeks to keep court records under seal. This article was written by James Hill. Attorneys for Ghislaine Maxwell, the former companion, co-conspirator, of deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, are asking a federal judge to keep a batch of court records under seal, arguing that public interest in the documents is outweighed by privacy considerations and the potential impact a release of the documents could have on an ongoing criminal investigation into alleged accomplices of Epstein. So basically what her lawyer is saying is those documents are filled with horrible, terrible things about Ghislaine Maxwell, and if they're released, it's going to have an effect on what people think about the case moving forward in the criminal realm. That's the point. Get them released, okay? We want to see all of this disinfected by the rays of sun when the curtain is pulled back. Can we please see the documents? Miss Maxwell is aware that investigations surrounding the alleged conduct of Mr. Epstein survive his death. It is unclear who are witnesses or targets of any investigation, Maxwell's attorney, Jeffrey Pagliuca, wrote Wednesday in a filing objection to unsealing certain documents. The sealed testimony or summaries may inappropriately influence potential witnesses or alleged victims. More legal wrangling, folks. They will do anything that they possibly can to make sure that those grand jury documents are not unsealed. They will jump through every loophole. They will use every back channel. But you can count on one thing. They do not want you to know just exactly what happened. They don't want you to know how evil the prosecution was in this case, how disgusting they conducted themselves. They don't want you to know any of that. Well, unfortunately for them, we're all going to know. The sealed court filings in the case, a now settled civil defamation lawsuit filed against Maxwell in 2015 by Virginia Roberts, are said to contain the names of hundreds of people, some famous and some not, who socialized, traveled, or worked with Epstein over the span of more than a decade. Look, I don't see the problem here. If you were running around with Jeffrey Epstein, people should probably know about it. This is a high-profile case. This man has been linked to all sorts of politicians, etc., etc. There is a lot of public interest in this case. And if you were hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, don't come crying to us now about your privacy. What were you doing hanging out with this man in the first place? That's the question you should be answering. The late financier, pedophile, has previously been linked to a bunch of high-profile business leaders, scientists, royalty, and politicians. Yeah, it goes on and on, right? The song goes on and on when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and his associations. He had many of them. Many scientists, many doctors, many lawyers, many royalty members of royalty, and certainly tons of politicians. All of these people were chummy with Jeffrey Epstein. All of these people were using his jet. All of these people were going to his properties. But they don't know anything. That's the narrative they expect you to swallow. Epstein, a convicted sex offender, was found dead in an apparent suicide in prison while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges that he denied. Among the records now being considered for release is a 418-page transcript of one of Maxwell's multi-hour depositions in the case, which Maxwell's attorneys argue were given under an expectation of confidentiality and had been agreed to by both sides in the dispute, according to Maxwell's court filing. Again, it's not that Maxwell is innocent, that they want to shine a light on everything and prove to you that Ghislaine Maxwell is an innocent woman. She is not. What they're trying to do is use the loopholes here, use legal language to make sure that this never sees the light of day, because they know how damning it is. They know that when people see just exactly what was occurring, when people truly understand what these people were up to, well, the outcry for justice is going to be so loud that 100 high-profile Dershowitz types won't be able to stop it. This series of pleadings concerns Roberts' attempt to compel Miss Maxwell to answer intrusive questions about her sex life. Pagliuca wrote, "The subject matter of these documents is extremely personal, confidential, and subject to considerable abuse by the media." Oh, please. She's not a victim here, okay? Ghislaine Maxwell is not a victim. You know what? She wasn't worried about all of this, about her confidentiality and her privacy being invaded when she was procuring girls for Jeffrey Epstein. She wasn't worried about any of this when she was involved in the abuse of these girls at Jeffrey Epstein's side, was she? So why should we be concerned about anything that she wants now? Sorry, you've lost that right. The collection of documents now being reviewed for potential release by senior U.S. District Court Judge Loretta Preska represents just a small subset of the thousands of pages of documents that must be reviewed for potential release, a process that could drag on for many months. And that's fine. If it has to drag on for many months for all of these documents to come out, then so be it. Hopefully, Judge Preska keeps on her path here and she releases these documents so that we can see just exactly how terribly the prosecution conducted themselves, just how terribly Ghislaine Maxwell has skidded out and avoided the law for so long. These documents are important, folks. Very important to furthering justice here. Roberts accused Maxwell of facilitating and participating in Epstein's abuse of minor girls. Maxwell has denied Roberts' allegations. When the defamation case was settled in 2017, a substantial portion of the court docket remained sealed or redacted. The sealed records include the identities of people who provided information in the case under an expectation of confidentiality, plus the names of alleged victims and individuals accused of enabling Epstein or participating in the abuse. Now, of course, when these documents are released, it could be redacted, right? You can redact the name of the alleged people who were victimized by Epstein if that's what we have to do, or people who provided evidence. But the people who are being accused here, they should have no right to privacy. They shouldn't have any right to not having this aired out for people to see what's going on. In my opinion, you lost all of those rights when you were hanging out with a convicted sex offender. Maxwell attorneys argue that the bulk of the sealed documents and exhibits should stay sealed, contending that they were gratuitous and served no legitimate purpose when they were submitted by Roberts' attorneys, and because many of the documents contain the names of dozens of non-parties who have yet to receive notice that the records could be made public. Well, that's fine. Send them their notices and let them know. And I don't care if people are worried about their privacy. Again, why are you hanging out with a convicted sex offender of such a high profile if you're worried about people knowing that you're friends with him? Did you really think that Jeffrey Epstein was going to stop abusing girls? Did you really think that he wasn't going to continue his criminalistic ways after that first arrest? So what excuse do you possibly have for hanging out with him? Your privacy is not my problem at this point, okay? I don't care about your privacy. If you were associated with Epstein, if you were named in these documents, there's a reason you were named, and that needs to be aired out. An attorney for Roberts did not respond to a request for a comment on Maxwell's court filing. Roberts, now a 36-year-old mother living in Australia, alleges she was sexually abused as a teenager by Epstein and Maxwell between 2000 and 2002. And we know from the past, and we know from everything Virginia has said, how credible her commentary is, and how credible her accusations are, and how incredible it is that the prosecution is taking this long to arrest Ghislaine Maxwell. Can you imagine the two guards that were supposedly sleeping when Epstein supposedly killed himself? They're the only two arrests we have in this case? And you want me to believe that we have a justice system that can be trusted? Sorry, I don't believe that. She also claims to have been directed to have sex with some of their prominent friends, including Britain's Prince Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. She filed the action against Maxwell in September 2015, alleging that the former British socialite, co-conspirator, defamed her when her publicist issued a statement referring to Roberts' allegations as obvious lies. Well, what did you think? You were just going to make those statements about Virginia and she's not going to fire back? What did you think? She was just going to sit back and continue to take your abuse? Those days are over. The predators have now become the prey. And Virginia and the rest of the survivors are now on the offense. For the next year and a half, attorneys for the two women engaged in an acrimonious duel of pretrial arguments, much of which took shape in heavily redacted or sealed court filings. That's pretty typical for a case like this, a high-profile case. A lot of this stuff is going to be redacted and sealed. The lawyers usually agree on stuff like that. But there are some times when that is not agreed upon or when there are leaks. And boy, if I've ever wanted a leak before, this is the time when I want one, because we need to see what's going on here. And hopefully Judge Preska really kicks this into overdrive and releases these documents. The case settled just before a trial was set to begin in May 2017. A year later, the Miami Herald newspaper filed an ultimately successful motion to unseal at least some portions of the undisclosed record of the case. And remember, Ghislaine Maxwell agreed to the settlement here. She agreed to pay out. She knows what she did. She doesn't want to face discovery in any of these trials. Do you think it's just a coincidence that any time we get close to discovery phase, something pops up? Oh, my mom's sick, or oh, I can't be involved in the civil portion of this deposition and discovery phase because of the criminal case. It's always an excuse with these people. And time in and time out, the court system lets them get away with it. Lawyers representing Roberts, Maxwell, the Herald, and an anonymous individual who intervened to assert privacy interests have been haggling for the last several months over their favored approaches to unsealing the records. The arguments over the protocols alone amounted to more than 50 additional entries on the court docket before Judge Preska arrived at the final procedure. Earlier this month, notification letters were sent to two John Does, anonymous individuals whose names are among several dozen that appear in just the first batch of sealed and redacted documents currently under review by Preska, according to court records. Neither of those individuals responded to the letters, according to Maxwell's court filing. So these individuals were sent letters by Preska, saying that they're going to be named in these documents, and they still have not responded to Preska. If they're so concerned about their privacy, why have they not responded? And if they can't be bothered to respond, why should we care about their privacy? Unseal the documents. Roberts has advocated for near total disclosure of the records, while Maxwell and attorneys for the intervening individuals have urged Preska to carefully balance the intense public interest in the case against potentially life-changing reputational damage that could befall those whose names are made public. Again, why are they palling around with Jeffrey Epstein? Why are they cavorting with Jeffrey Epstein? Why are they engaged in business dealings with Jeffrey Epstein? Why are they engaged in a private relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? This is not our fault. This is what reporters are supposed to do. This is what independent journalists and investigators are supposed to do. Uncover this sort of nonsense. And if it has life-changing, reputational damage that occurs from it, well, if you were involved in this, then that's on you. You should not have been hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. And if your name is in this, and you weren't involved in the criminal aspect of this case, then this would be the time to come forward and put a line under it and speak about it publicly and bring your case not only to the people, but to the prosecutors and let them know everything that you might know about Epstein. You might have information that you don't even know about. But where are all of these people? Are any of them coming forward? Does anybody have a moral compass that is not broken within so-called polite society of New York and elsewhere? It sure seems that every single one of them is corrupt to the core, folks. Because the parties reached a confidential settlement, the allegations leveled in the dispute are unproven, having never been tested by an independent trier of fact. That is true. But again, why would Ghislaine Maxwell settle before we got to that stage in the case? If she believed in what she was saying, if she truly believed that she could win in court and clear her name, then why didn't she do so? Why didn't she even make an attempt? I'll tell you why, folks. Because in my opinion, she is guilty as hell. Previously unsealed records from the case have already generated headlines around the world after a federal appeals court released more than 2,000 pages of documents last August, a month after Epstein's arrest by federal authorities in New York. And that was a huge dump, right? There was a lot of commotion around that dump and people, digging through it with a fine-tooth comb, and a lot of people did great work. A lot of people. Look, there are so many great investigators out there that it would take me an hour here on the podcast to mention them all. Everybody out there that's investigating this case, if you listen to this podcast, you have my utmost respect, because the things that have been unearthed, forget it. And over and over and over again, we see independent content creators, independent journalists, and people who are in positions similar doing the legwork here, putting the pieces together. Meanwhile, the legacy media is MIA. Who knows where they are? They have all the resources at their fingertips, and they can't be bothered to do a deep dive into this case, huh? Sure makes you think, doesn't it? Included in that collection were excerpts from Roberts' depositions naming several prominent men she alleges Epstein and Maxwell directed her to have sex with, including Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, attorney Alan Dershowitz, former U.S. Senator George Mitchell, and former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson. All those men and others accused by Roberts have denied the allegations. And I have done a deep dive into every one of those people. I did a deep dive into Bill Richardson, not recently, a few months ago, maybe a month and a half ago. George Mitchell as well, and Dershowitz. You can find them all in the catalog. I know there's a lot to get through for the newer listeners here, and I've had some people ask me where they should start. And honestly, Daily Drop number 1 is probably your best bet. But that's a huge commitment, right? So if not Daily Drop 1, then I honestly don't know where to start, because that's how crazy this case is. That's how many twists and turns there are in this case. But if there are certain individuals that you are specifically interested in, there is pretty much nobody that we haven't done a deep dive on here on this podcast. So go check the catalog and you can see the episodes for each and every one of those people that we just talked about, or just mentioned, I should say. The documents and exhibits should be carefully examined for the vivid, detailed, and tragic story they tell in the face of cursory, bumper sticker-like statements by those accused. Roberts' attorney, Sigrid McCauley, wrote in a statement on the day of the document's release. Virginia Roberts is a survivor and a woman to be believed. She believes a reckoning of an inevitable accountability has begun. And guess what, Virginia? We believe that as well. And we're going to keep moving forward and chasing justice down in this case, because at this point, we're all in. There's no giving up ground now. It is all offense from here out. The days of playing the defense and giving the narrative to these people, those days are over. It is time to charge forward. It is time to move forward and take the initiative. The morning after the first set of documents was made public, Epstein was found unresponsive in his jail cell in Manhattan, where he was being held pending trial on charges of child sex trafficking and conspiracy. They don't mention the witness tampering either, because there was a lot of that as well. And later on, when Jen and Lisa upload their episode on the Prince and the Pervert podcast, I talk a little bit more about that. Maxwell, 58, is the daughter of the late British publishing magnate Robert Maxwell, who died in 1991 in what was ruled an accidental drowning off the coast of the Canary Islands. And there is a lot around that as well. A lot of people believe that it was not an accident and that Robert Maxwell, quote unquote, suicided himself the same way Epstein did. She met Epstein in New York following her father's death, and the two were closely linked for more than a decade. They've been friends for a lot longer than that, and close for a lot longer than that. Sources tell ABC News that Maxwell remains under criminal investigation by federal authorities in New York who have vowed to hold responsible any alleged co-conspirators in Epstein's sex trafficking conspiracy. And I've heard that as well. I have heard that she is definitely under investigation, that she's being looked at very, very, very closely, and that she is in the leadership role at this point. She's the one where the weight is going to come down on. She's the one left holding the bag now that Epstein is gone. If we're looking at this as a criminal enterprise, then Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were the boss, underboss. You could flip them around whichever way you want, basically. And below them, the core four, those were the capos. So those are the people in the leadership positions. And the idea is to flip those people. And I think that eventually that's what's going to occur, and the feds are going to go big game hunting, and when I say that, I mean Ghislaine Maxwell. She's going to be the one that's left holding the bag, in my opinion, when all is said and done. In previously unsealed excerpts from her depositions in the case, Maxwell derided Roberts as an absolute liar. She has also denied allegations from Roberts and other women who contend in court filings that Maxwell recruited and trained girls and young women for Epstein and facilitated their abuse. Well, if Virginia is such a liar, why'd you settle out of court and not go to discovery phase? You should have seen it through if you wanted to clear your name, right? She absolutely denies that she participated in this or any other sexual abuse or trafficking or assault, and no court, judge, or jury has ever determined that she was. An attorney for Maxwell wrote last month in a related case. Well, yeah, no shit. Nobody's ever determined that because you never get past discovery. You always settle out of court, or you get an immunity deal. Well, your luck has run out, Ghislaine Maxwell. All eyes are on you. All the focus is on you. And guess what? You wanted to be the big shot, right? You wanted to be in control. Well, remember your leadership role when those RICO indictments find their way to your home. Because that's where they're coming, and that's what's going to occur. Ghislaine Maxwell is going to end up holding the bag for this, folks. That is definitely the way it looks to me. That's the way it's trending. And I would not be surprised if the FBI wants to talk to Andrew to try and go down that route, to try and get him to spill the beans on Ghislaine as well. And I am of the opinion that somebody has already rolled, that somebody is already talking. Who that person might be, I have no idea. But all of the signs lead to this case moving forward and people really getting the pressure turned on. So I'll be keeping my eye on this and seeing how this all plays out and seeing just exactly where we are when it comes to the inevitable RICO convictions that await everybody involved in Jeffrey Epstein's criminal enterprise. If you'd like to contact me, you could do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, everybody, we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll do it all over again.